The midlife void nobody wants to talk about. Christine Burke here, the Midlife CEO. And today I want to talk about this crazy thing around what I call the void. Now, if you're in midlife, you're probably thinking that's a great name for it. That's a great way to describe how I'm actually feeling right now. So a lot of people are actually calling this a crisis. I do not subscribe to the idea of midlife being a crisis. It can feel like it because of menopause, the mental, emotional, biological, physiological changes are profound, but it is simply not a crisis. So I want to talk about why midlife can feel really empty, but why it's not actually a crisis. So maybe this was your experience too, and you legit and never had conversations with your mother or your grandmother or your aunt or, other women in your life about menopause. Maybe you did, or maybe people told you that menopause was about, hot flashes, that you might gain weight. You might have been told about HRT. But one of the biggest things that I know nobody ever told me about midlife and menopause was what was going to actually happen after the menopause process was over and I was going to be faced with empty nesting. And so empty nesting for me has really been quite a deep, quite sad experience because, and I know you know this, we spend half or more of our adult lives raising children. I was especially invested in my kids, a stay-at-home mom, and all of a sudden they grow up, they become independent, and hot damn, they don't need you anymore. It can be quite soul destroying. And it's not just with kids either. This whole idea of being a mom and being needed, being the emotional carry, being the one who manages the schedule. Even to this day, I'm sure, if I were to disappear off the face of the planet, nobody would know what to do around here. So it's really quite a severe transition midlife, especially because of this empty nesting, especially because of menopause, especially because for many of us, we are at a time in our careers where we're either, looking forward to retirement, maybe we don't want to retire. I talk to a lot of women in business. I coach women entrepreneurs, and midlife is especially incredible time to level up business and brand because there is this space. And a lot of us now have the time to be able to really, do what we want to do and whatever that is for us. So what is this void that I speak about? Well, it's empty nest. Okay. It's that bittersweet release of your role of being a mom and now moving into something different that you might not even know what that is now, and having to really, release yourself from being that hands-on everyday taking care of mom and actually watch your adult children walk away from you and be independent. Menopause has a mental component equally as much as it has a physiological, biological component. With the decrease of estrogen, it influences our brain health. Many people experience anxiety. I had a lot of anxiety when I was perimenopausal, and it just came out of nowhere. I didn't understand because nobody explained to me what the links were between these hormones and what was actually going on in my brain. Cortisol tends to take a front seat in menopause because the estrogen and the progesterone are going down, which means we have to be so careful with our diet, our mental emotional health, because the high cortisol is already a breeding ground for feeling this kind of stress and anxiety. Another part of this void is the roles changing for many of us being a stay-at-home mom, again, being the mother, being the carrier of all things. A lot of women actually choose to leave relationships during menopause. It's quite a thing. And it is because the mental emotional terrain changes in our bodies, and all of a sudden we start looking differently at our relationships. Again, our roles in the home, our roles at work, our roles in the community. And it's this feeling that we are no longer constantly required. That's really the best way to explain it, is that we are going from this phase of being needed and being required and being the holder, being the carrier, I call it, to this phase where it's no longer our job anymore. And that's where the bittersweet part comes in, because it's sad in a way that I'm not so instrumental in my kids' lives. But on the other hand, it's space, and it starts to feel like a little bit of freedom. But for many women, this can trigger feelings of depression, again, anxiety, because it's confusing. It's confusing. And again, throwing in the physiological effects of menopause with the situational stuff that's going on with people in our lives, relationships, jobs, all of it. So when you've built your identity over years based on being needed and being the go-to person, it can feel really isolating. And it often feels like grief. It can feel like a loss, because it is. And we have to allow ourselves time to grieve. So although it can feel like it at the start, this void that I'm describing, it's not an absence. It feels like an absence, but just for a moment, What it really is capacity. It's capacity returning to your nervous system. Because if we can do things right, and if we can learn how to calm our nervous system, really important at this time in life, that isolation, that void, what sometimes feels like chaos, is actually going to start feeling like capacity. Like I can start taking things on for me, things that I want to do, things on my bucket list, how I want to level up in my business. So I like to call this the reckoning, which is that moment legit that you realize, wait a second, this is actually my time to let it all go. And then we move into what I call the commissioning. It's you being commissioned into a higher calling, into a leadership situation. So it's the moment you stop being the emotional anchor to everyone, and you literally start becoming the architect of what I call the second act. And it's your second act CEO phase. So this is where leadership begins. It's where business can really take off, really takes root. Is where you grow into that leadership in your business and in your life. And so this has been a huge learning curve for me over the last maybe 14 to 18 months, where I've realized that God put me in this home. God put me here to be the steward of this family and of these children. And although, sometimes I complained about having to do all the things, I really feel like it built me, and I'm sure that it built you. And it's really important that you ask yourself a few really enlightening questions. And this is important because we want to steward ourselves through this void, through this transition into leadership, not into somewhere else, not into depression, not into, I can't do anything now. I mean, we want to drown out the noise, the status quo that's telling us we're aging now, we're coming to the end, it's time to just retire and be happy with doing less. I say no. So here's 3 questions you can ask yourself in your move towards stewardship and commission. Okay, question number 1, and this is a really good one. If I am no longer defined by being needed, who am I becoming? Wow. Really powerful question. And I encourage you to sit down and ask yourself this question. So, what are you doing with the space and opportunity that's being created right now? The capacity that's being given to you because there's this dissipation of the emotional weight. It's leaving you. Number two, what would it look like to treat this season like a commissioning versus a crisis? So what does that look like for you? So if you felt postured, confident in your business, for example, and you were restructuring your life with this new space that you have available to you, the time, the energy, what would that actually look like for you? Maybe you're going to step into what I call my CEO 4. So these are core fundamental leadership habits for the woman who really wants to step into being a midlife CEO. So these are habits around your health, habits around time, habits around boundaries, habits around what you actually allow, relationships that maybe you no longer tolerate. And number three, what's one emotion, one thing that you know made you feel like an absolute rock star when you were young? Because she's still in there. That young girl who was brave, who took risks, who was like, yeah, I got that. Yeah, I can do that. I mean, all I have to go do is look at my 15-year-old daughter who is so confident in a lot of ways. And it makes me realize that when we are young, we had such fire in us. We had dreams, we had goals, we had ideas of how we wanted to be in our life. And this is a great time to revisit that. So I hope you got value from today's video. Remember, midlife is not a crisis, it's a commissioning. And I really encourage you to sit down and answer those 3 questions for yourself today and see what you come up with. See you next time.